Okay, everybody, we're excited here at the Daily Gooner Pod to have James Benge, now of CBS. He was with us before, not with CBS then. He's moved up in the sports world. Welcome, sir. Good to have you back.
Thank you. My pleasure. I really enjoyed chatting to you guys on transfer deadline day. I'm hoping things are going to be less hectic today. I'm conscious that as we speak, Mesut Ozil is doing a live Twitter Q&A. So who knows? Things might get quite hectic suddenly.
All right, I'm going to let these guys jump in. I got lots of questions, but they have more. So I defer to whoever wants to start.
Sam, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. James, I want to ask you about the man of the moment right now, Emile Smith-Rowe.
Something your thoughts?
Yes. Your thoughts around how he's come in. One thing that I want to touch on is, as similar to what Ian Wright said, Emile working in half spaces in that number 10. I just want to know your thoughts on how you perceive Emile compared to, say, Willian in that position, because watching the game when was it? Yesterday? Possibly. It seemed night and day. So I just want to see your thoughts on that, really.
Yeah. I'm conscious that it's not fun to sort of kick someone while they're down in Willian's case. So I'd like to get the Willian stuff out of the way. It's just a really bad fit. And I know there are a lot of people that were sceptical. I thought it was quite a good move because he played well for Chelsea last season. And I thought, well, actually, he can play the 10 because, at Chelsea, he sort of functioned as, in that space between the right flank and the 10, the half space, however you want to call it. But I don't know why it hasn't clicked, because it's so fundamental that it's not. It can't just be one thing. It can't just be Arteta. And he said that he hasn't quite got the tactics yet. It can't just be that, though. It can't just be. It has to be something more deep rooted. And I don't want to speculate on that, because I think we end up speculating on things that if we're wrong, it's not a great thing to be wrong about. So I'd rather just sort of praise Emile Smith-Rowe. I think two of the big things are the work off the ball. And we see that when they don't have possession. I mean, I didn't really notice this until Arsenal posted a tweet for his goal that it all came from him pressing and it all came from him winning possession high up the pitch. But it's movement. It's constant movement. And I know that, I've interviewed him before and, know people who know him really well. I know that two things he's been really conscious about pretty much ever since he sort of entered the sort of cusp of first team football, maybe going back to the FA Youth Cup run, was his need to do things when he doesn't have possession. Because when you're a young lad like Emile and you can dribble and you can pass and you can shoot, it's a bit easy then to think, I don't need to worry about what happens when I don't have the ball. And, I think the new breed of number 10s have learned that you have to offer a real dynamism and presence when possession isn't your way. So the thing I noticed, and I'd love to see this in the ground a bit more, I haven't seen as much of Arsenal in the flesh of late as I'd have liked, is how much he's constantly moving. And I know that's something he's drilling into himself, and how much he's just chasing. He's chasing the ball. He's blocking passing lanes. He's making things a little bit more difficult for the opposition. And Arteta said the same thing. One of the big things that he and Martinelli have brought is energy. I believe from Arsenal's internal data that no one has covered more distance in the minutes Smith-Rowe's been on the pitch than Smith-Rowe. So the guy is working really hard, and I think that that then it's just this real quality as well, isn't there? I mean, when the ball comes his way, he's a joy. I really like him. I remember going back to the semi-final, possibly even quarter-final of the FA Youth Cup where Arsenal ended up in the final. And I remember him scoring a goal that was the sort of goal you'd think Jack Wilshere would score, beating 4 players. And kind of from then I was smitten. I'm not going to lie. We all have we shouldn't, but we have players, as a journalist, we're objective, but we have our favourites. And I love watching Emile Smith-Rowe. He's great fun. He's a great lad. He will work hard. Tough time with injuries, but people think he's injury prone. He's not. He's just had tough injuries. Anything else you want to talk about on the Smith-Rowe game? But that's a bit of a waxing lyrical. But yeah, we're happy to talk about him.
Yeah, just following on Smith Rowe, with Arsenal's need for a creative midfielder and he's seamlessly fitted into that middle, do you think it would be wise to get a more experienced number 10 for the rest of the season and then potentially look at someone in the summer or someone that might take his position and stop him from developing in the rest of this season?
Yeah, I would go for the former, and I would be looking at I mean, partly as well, it comes down to the market stuff. You can't get a world-class number 10 right now. Or at the very least, you certainly can't sign one. Arsenal can't afford one. And, Buendia is no more of a sort of certain quantity in an Arsenal shirt, I would argue, than Smith Rowe. I like the idea of, I know he's not that keen on coming, and that's kind of why the indications are coming out of Arsenal that they don't want him. It's more because earlier in the process, Isco kind of indicated it wasn't top of his list. That his mind might change there. I don't know. But what I heard was he wasn't. But he's the sort of player I think would do really well at Arsenal for half a season of just coming in and giving the young guys a bit of know-how, bit of experience, getting himself game time, getting himself rhythm without having to play every single game because you've got Smith Rowe now. You don't need to worry about having a person that you hand over the keys to the offense for 6 months or it's 4 months or whatever it is, because you're really looking for someone that you can rotate in and out. So I would look for a solid veteran. I'd also be saying Arsenal have got probably 30 games left this season, maybe about that. And I'd be saying I want Smith Rowe to play in some capacity in 20 of them. So I just need someone that can fill a gap, and then we'll see where we're at in the summer. See if we think Smith Rowe is ready to be the main guy, and you get a backup, or if you think we might need to bring someone in for 2 years. So yeah, I'd be looking at a loan and Isco, someone like that. I think that makes the most sense.
James, I'm going to piggyback on their questions and ask you a question about value. I mean, Mikel Arteta's been here just a couple of weeks past 1 year. And with the window open, there's always the grousing about, can they afford it? Are they out of money? What's their kitty? We know they have a logjam of experienced players they'd like to move out to create space. I'd like you to comment on the fact that, for all the talk that Arsenal isn't playing with the kitty that, a Man City has, for example, that one of the ways around this is that Mikel Arteta has created well over £100 million in value just from Saka and Smith Rowe in the last 12 months alone. We saw Saka's now the 15th most valuable as a young player, or just player.
He's 100 million on his own, isn't he?
Right. And then Smith Rowe is fulfilling the prophecy of the Huddersfield town manager last year. He said a year from now, if he gets to play, he's £50 million. Well, if you've developed 100 and some odd £50 million of value, you really don't need to go and spend it, do you?
No, and for me, the interesting ones so I look at Saka and Smith Rowe and say, well, you're probably not going to realise that value because Saka in particular, but I would think Smith Rowe, they're not going to be players you're going to want to sell for a while yet. I'm not cashing in my chips. However, I would suspect that for all the difficulties he had over the last few months, Eddie Nketiah's value has grown significantly under Arteta. He's kind of gone from a substitute striker in the Championship to a player that's shown that he will score in the Premier League and will lead the line. He's not perfect, but he's 22. And I know that Arteta said today he wasn't looking to sell. What I would say is pretty much every player in this Arsenal squad has a price. And that, if someone comes and pays that price, be it West Ham or whoever, that they're available. I think the same is true to an extent with Willock. At the very least, I think. He was developing value under Emery, and I think that value's probably been retained under Arteta. I think you're looking at a £20 million player in Willock. Similar value with Nelson. They're playing regularly enough that they're kind of not. They're not being wasted as assets. And again, the indications out of Arsenal are they aren't looking to sell any of those players. Having said that, no one's come in with an offer that's tested that resolve. And I do believe, speaking to people, but mostly just, from assessing the squad, that those three are all players that at some stage Arsenal will kind of look to cash in on and need to kind of judge right. And Nketiah is a really fiddly one with his contract being up in 18 months. Part of the reason I think they're not looking to sell him is sign him to a new deal, get him a few more games, then you could have a striker that's worth nearer 30 than probably now. I think most clubs would look to pay below 20 for him.
Hey, James, I just want to touch on the next lot of youth potentially knocking on the Arsenal front door. In terms of people like Miguel Aziz, Joel Lopez, players in that bracket, in terms of their development, would you personally go down the Chelsea route of loaning them out for, say, two years, possibly onto a third year, to really get them immersed into first team football? Or would you be looking at maybe a year on loan, trying to integrate them, considering if you look at the first team in the next 2 years, there appears that there's going to be quite a overhaul in the first team?
I think you're going to play it by ear with the individual. I'm really interested in Lopez because he's good. I don't know if he's great, but he's good. And Arsenal haven't kind of had to look in their academy and go, we might have a defender here we can work with. And I think with defenders in particular, I'd want to be seeing them getting game time, probably at a lower level. And so, Lopez, I'd be kind of saying he's not going to be playing for Arsenal until he's 23, 24. I mean, and this kind of comes on to Saliba as well. How many teenage defenders do you see in the Premier League except Wesley Fofana? Aziz, I would look at him and say he's got quite a particular set of skills. I know Matt Smith is doing pretty well on loan at Swindon, but someone like Aziz, who you look at as a sort of deep line playmaker, you're going to have to, if you're going to look at loaning him out, you've got to be really careful where you put him, because I don't particularly think it would suit him to go into the English lower leagues. It's a highest, I mean, I don't know how much of the FA Cup third round you guys watched aside from Arsenal, but there were some games there where you kind of realise it's not lump the ball long and slam into tackles anymore. Having said that, there is always going to be a little bit of that in the English lower leagues, and it's hard if you're a slightly undersized, skillful, Andrea Pirlo, Sergio Busquets vision. That's your vision for how you end up playing. That probably doesn't suit the English lower leagues. I'd be looking to get Aziz in and around the squad. It'll be really interesting how many midfield spots are open next summer, and whether Aziz could maybe pick up some minutes in the EFL Cup and, let's be honest, probably the Europa League. I suppose this is the thing, is who knows whether Arsenal might be playing Champions League football and then everything has to be radically reconsidered. But I think Aziz in particular is someone that would benefit from being around the squad more. I think those sorts of technically gifted players, you're better off just putting them in a situation where they're with other people that are on their level rather than more rough and tumble context.
Sorry, and just to follow on with that, Caitlin Surjan.
Oh, no idea. Sian, I think
so. Something along that line. With him, since he's come to Arsenal, it seems that he's really been fast tracked through the ranks, through the under 18s, through the under 23s. If some reports were to be believed, he's now been unofficially promoted to the first team.
Yeah, he might be saying that, and his agent might be. I don't think he really has. It's quite a big deal when you promote people to the first team, because it happened to Saka really late on. He was just a first team regular, but there's a lovely ceremony where they kind of go and get your jersey from the academy. You have the two changing rooms for the 23s and the seniors are at opposite ends of the building, and there's this sort of ceremony they do where they bring your jersey from one end to the other. And I think with Saka that happened. Saka, it might not have happened because he'd been around so long. But yeah, with all the young lads, when they promoted a bunch of them, Smith Rowe and Nketiah that one season, and they do that ceremony. So I don't think that's happened with Sian yet. But sorry, I interrupted you mid-question.
No problem. I'm just thinking, in terms of attacking midfielders, say worst case scenario, Arsenal weren't to bring one in,
Mm.
would you potentially push him forward as a backup to Smith Rowe?
This season?
Or too early?
Probably too early this season. Because I do think that, if you set your team out in the right way, and if you have a player like Saka out wide who can do more of the playmaking, I do still think you get value from Willock in that advanced midfield role. It's more a sort of Frank Lampard style late runs into the box. That's the vision of Willock I would have. So yeah, he's probably not ready yet. I think we all sort of. The problem is the best time for that is early in the season, isn't it? And there's just not going to be that many games, I think, that are going to be sufficiently low stake, because I think Arsenal are going to end up in and around the Europa League qualification spots, and I think they're going to end up going deep in the Europa League. So there's going to be no rest and no games that you can kind of blood a youngster.
Yeah, moving on to the first team, and a player that can't be good because he didn't cost 55 million. Do you think Rob Holding deserves his new contract?
Yeah. If he's your starting centre back, but that's quite a high, low ceiling there that you've got. He's not the starting centre back of a Champions League team, but he could be the second choice right-sided centre back. I think one of the things that people forget is that when you come back from that ACL injury, it's a year out and then another year before you're back, really back, and back to your best. So that's probably just about where Holding is now, that we should be seeing him really build form and consistency. And I think we are. I think we've come to expect so much from modern centre-backs, and I think it's the hardest position on the pitch. You've got to now be a deep line playmaker. You've got to be as fast as Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. You can't make a single mistake ever, especially if you play for Arsenal, because boy, will it get seized upon. I think Holding does, obviously, he's not as fast as Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, but he's very good at dealing with crosses. He's very good at defending a lead. It's not glamorous. I don't enjoy watching Rob Holding defend. I thought he would end up being more of a ball player when he first came into the team, and he's okay. He doesn't give possession away, but he's not a David Luiz from there. But he is the sort of person that whether it's your Saliba or they sign the centre-back, another centre-back in the summer, if they go down and you need someone to step in for 5 or 6 games, you would feel confident that Holding will step in and not concede you 2 goals in that time. And that, I think, is quite a valuable skill set, actually, that we all underrate a bit. So, yeah, ticks the homegrown box, is still quite young, is a great lad around the dressing room. I don't know the exact terms of his salary, but it's not costing 6 figures, I don't believe. So I think that's a pretty solid investment there. Saves you some money on a transfer fee. Go and invest that in your new starter or whoever.
All right, you just touched on William Saliba, and he's now played 2 games for Nice. And so we've all had a chance to put some playing time, some minutes behind all the presumptions. Oh, there was it was the biggest mystery. Like, why isn't he playing? Mm-hmm. Are they mishandling? Everybody had an opinion, but nobody had any evidence. Now we've seen 2 games. He's showing us athleticism, but he's also just demonstrated some rough edges to his game. Mm-hmm. So kind of backs up, I think, what the club is being. And you just brought up a very interesting point. This, for all the talk of we've got to put him in, he's the greatest things that France has put out. Probably better than anybody, certainly on this pod, how ruthless this base can be. And were he put into that situation, were he to have made the same mistakes in a Prem match that he made in these 2 games with Nice, see a very different result. What's your assessment on the handling now of William Saliba? Do you think they handle it correctly?
Obviously what they didn't handle correctly was getting him out on loan, and it is a pretty heinous is a bit, well, no, failing to get him, that move to Saint Etienne, and then dithering and not really convincing yourself that any of the Championship teams were the right ones, was pretty bad management from Edu. It's not really kind of good enough to allow your centre back to waste away, and it seems pretty clear he was quite upset by it. And I think from a personal relationship standpoint, that's all you can make all that up, but it's just not a great way to start life. However, I mean, like for me, the talent assessment looks about right. That exactly as you're saying, Raphael, he would have found it really tough going in the Premier League, because I saw the first game, and this kind of chimed with what was coming out of Arsenal, that he was a bit impetuous with his tackling. He went to ground a bit easy. That actually all the raw attributes are there, and it's better to take your time with him and make sure that when he comes in, he can make a really positive impact. And in that first game against Nice, I saw the makings of a great centre back there. Maybe I wanted to, because I think we all would like to see Saliba be a success, but you can certainly see that he ticks the boxes that you would require. I thought Mikel Arteta didn't do himself any favours with the way he publicly handled it I think there was a reluctance within Arsenal to just really own that mistake and just say, look, we got it wrong. And this is the reason we are not playing him once a month, because we don't think him playing once a month is really very good for his confidence. We don't think it's good for Arsenal and his cohesion, and also we do have these other defenders to play, and they are going to play more regularly. So we need to give them game time. And look, we're planning on sending Saliba out you think the window closed in mid-October. So it was 2.5 months. If you just say, look, in 2.5 months, he's going out on loan. That is the plan. So we're going to use the other squad players instead and not kind of throw him in for a few games and risk him getting an injury. And potentially, it's things like that. Arteta was really good in his first press conference after Saliba went, in terms of saying, I didn't think it was good for him to play 1 week and then not play for another 2-3 weeks. And I don't agree with that assessment, and I would have sort of said, let's play him every single Europa League game and see what comes of that, and then see but I can also understand that. I think what people couldn't understand was just leaving him in the reserves, not really explaining clearly what was going on, because there was such great hopes. And I think one of the things that Arteta's not great at is sort of talking about people outside the group and kind of understanding what Arsenal fans are thinking about that. He was not great. They were not great at messaging Saliba, because in the end, it seems like they had the right view of him, that he wasn't quite ready to be thrown in at the deep end. And there's no shame about that, because he's 19 or 20. That's, Virgil van Dijk when he was 19 wasn't even playing for Groningen. It's not a problem, but you allow it to become a problem if you don't kind of control the message.
Just on Saliba again, there's no chance of him being permanently sold, is there? Because I've got him on my shirt and I'd be absolutely devastated.
There are no plans. I never say there's no chance anymore, because I can look a right fool. But there's no plans. Absolutely not. And the plan is to bring him back in pre-season, and they'll see from there. I have a sneaky feeling he's going to kind of step into a bit of a role next season. It might be a smaller one, but I think he'll play a bit next season.
Good stuff.
For me, you spoke about one of the squad players, Mustafi, being one of them squad players. I think he's only played something like 45 Premier League minutes this season, I believe.
Yeah.
With him, obviously, he can sign a pre-contract with any club, barring an English Premier League side, for the summer. There's been a lot of talk around him potentially going off back to Italy. I believe his other half really likes Italy. Genoa have made some inquiries, I believe. There was some talk about Real Betis maybe looking at him. For me, if I was in his position, I'd be probably looking at getting game time, because also you've got the Euros coming up in the summer. What would be the best outcome for him, obviously, between the two windows? Because it seems unlikely that he'd play much in the second half of the season. So surely with the Euros, it's a big thing for any player.
Yeah.
Surely he'd be looking out to get out now?
I guess, I mean, he'd have to play really well, though, wouldn't he, to get into the Euros for Germany? And God knows. So I spoke to some people near Mustafi before Christmas, and Italy is the one that appeals to him. I think a lot of this, I think the situation with the pandemic, we do forget how that affects the players as people and how that makes them just a little bit more conscious of picking the right place. A lot of them are quite a bit keener to get out of London the way things are going, understandably. But, Mustafi's view has been for several years, when I talk to people close to him, it's only leaving Arsenal to go to the right situation. I do, however, think he's going to look to go this month, because one thing that the sort of agent world is suggesting is that the sort of massive signing on fees where you would effectively get your transfer fee as a signing on fee, that doesn't really exist anymore, at least for the next couple of years, because clubs just, they're not going to pay that. And someone like Mustafi, no one's sort of saying we'll pay you £3 million to go and play for us. He's not quite that level. And I think it could be quite a chocker free agent market. I think a few players are kind of clear. I mean, Socrates it seems to me from the outside that Socrates' view is better to get a good landing spot now than worry about, competing with other free agents in the summer. That's just me speculating there. I don't know that for a fact, but I think that seems to be the view within Socrates, because within his camp and from him, that certainly seems to be the view. And I wonder if it's the same for Mustafi, of just best to find a good spot, get yourself, as you're saying, get game time, even if it's not for the Euros, if it's just to build some momentum, to enjoy your time playing football. It's curious though, because at the same time, I'm sure that Arteta would say, if you want to stay Musty, he would trust Mustafi if he had to turn to him. And I suppose because he's only played 45 minutes of football, obviously there was the EFL Cup, but we've had quite a few good games of late, haven't we? The most recent major game was the FA Cup semi-final, when he was the best defender on the pitch. It's time for him to move on pretty soon, but it's a long-winded way of saying I don't really know what he's going to do. Sorry about that.
No. Just another one for me. The keeper scenario. Branderson, it appears, was signed in the summer. Seemingly by reports that have come out over the last couple of days that he was supposed to be a third choice keeper.
Yes.
In the grander scheme of things. Can you see potentially a homegrown keeper coming in? Because obviously the squad is still quite bloated.
Yeah, that's what appeals to them about Raya. I mean, aside from, obviously, he is a good keeper and he ticks a lot of the boxes for a modern keeper, good with his feet and all that. But one of the things that appeals about Raya is that he is good with it. He is homegrown. It would be interesting if I don't know, but I saw the reports this morning that they'd be looking for a veteran to come in on loan. I would think that would be homegrown. I think the squad, with Kolasinac having gone, it wouldn't have to be. But I think when you start planning long term, you need to kind of be thinking of that. At least one of those three goalkeeper spots going to someone that's homegrown. Like Arsenal was saying that, I think there was a view that Runarsson could be the third or could be the second, depending on how he got on. And obviously, Iñaki Kana gave him a great recommendation, said he's worth giving a chance. And it seems from training, and obviously we've seen in games, that he's not quite convinced that he's not convinced the staff that he's at the level to be a number two. And I thought it was pretty indicative that he didn't play in the FA Cup. And I would be looking to send him on loan or get some money back for him. It doesn't seem the shrewdest move to then back yourself into a corner where your second choice goalkeeper, who could cost quite a lot of money, has to really be homegrown. I didn't think that was a shrewd bit of business. I think that £1 million could end up being another 11, 12 million on a solid backup to Leno. You just think, well, congratulations, you've wasted quite a lot of money.
On deadline day, we was discussing our central striker and who should be starting, and we all agreed here that it should be Aubameyang.
Yeah.
But now, with the emergence of Martinelli, Saka and Smith Rowe behind him, Lacazette has got a new lease of life. In your opinion, do you stick with Lacazette or do you try and get Aubameyang working with the younger players?
So for this season, I would, at least until Laka, he's a streaky striker. So use this streak while he's on form. You play him and you can put Aubameyang out wide. I guess we're still waiting for news on Martinelli. It's been my day off, so I haven't asked the question of anyone who might know whether he'll be back soon. But certainly while Martinelli's out, I would say Aubameyang on the left, Saka on the right, and Lacazette through the middle. I would be really careful though with, particularly with Lacazette. Paying you don't pay for past production when you're thinking about your plans. You need to think, what will Lacazette be like next season? Obviously his last of his contract, and he can't be a building block for the future. I really like him. I think he's been much maligned by Arsenal fans because I think he is clutch, to use an American term. I think when Arsenal need big performances, Laka turns up more often than people think. But I don't see his game improving with age. I don't think a lot of his raw attributes will age very well, and he will get slower, and therefore he will be less effective at pressing. So certainly use Laka while he's in form, but I would not be making too many plans beyond the next few games where he's concerned.
Right. Either you guys have more team roster-based questions?
Yeah. Just one more from me. David Luiz, obviously out of contract in the summer. With him, he seems to come across as a big character within the squad, in the changing room. Depending on his future plans, I don't know whether you know if there's any plans in the pipeline for him to potentially stay on as a coach at Arsenal if he sees as his boots hanging up at the end of the season.
I hadn't even thought of that. That could be. I don't think he'll retire because I don't think. I mean, he gives the impression of someone that loves playing football. I mean, you say big character. He is. When he's in a good mood, he's a joy. He's such a. I can't speculate what he's like when he's not in a good mood. But certainly, when you catch him on the right moment, he is someone that will brighten your day. Even if you're, I remember him coming to. After the Burnley 0-0, coming to chat to us, and it just, we were shivering in the freezing cold at Turf Moor, and he made that, that whole arduous journey to watch a 0-0. He made it all worthwhile because he's a great guy. I don't know if there's space on the coaching staff, and I think there will be in the summer. I know it's a bit, emotional or whatever, but I'd rather give it to an Arsenal legend. I mean, come on, there's so many that are looking to take that next step, and I think actually it'd be really helpful to get another player, another individual around that gets the club, ideally someone that's maybe got a bit more experience in the managerial game. And weirdly, off the top of my head, I can't think who any of them are. My brain keeps flashing Tony Adams, and I'd love that, but I don't think that's maybe the best idea. But I wouldn't be looking to. I think David Luiz might be a good coach one day, but I wouldn't be rushing to hand him that job straight out. You need some experience, don't you? With so many rookies, I think more experience on Arteta's coaching staff would be great.
Would you potentially welcome back Big Sol?
Ooh. I tell you what, I mean, he's fantastic. I think my thing with Sol would be, I think he could be Arsenal's manager one day. It's there's so many steps, and he's done things exactly the right way. But the problem is when you do it the right way, kind of big clubs go, yeah, but what does managing? Is it Southend? places like that. What does that teach you about managing Arsenal? And he'd obviously have to take many steps up the pyramid, and I'd love him to get that opportunity. He'd be fun. I think if he'd be up for it, I'd certainly say there's a man that can organise the defence. There's a man that can that clearly can coach. I think he'd be a really good choice. Actually, I'd never thought of that. He'd be great.
Last one from me. With reports over the last week or so, are you delighted you don't really have to ask about Mesut Ozil anymore, if and when it's confirmed?
Yeah, it's a joy. I mean, there are times when it is the right question to ask, but not every single week. I don't want to go. I can't. It's so hard to compose all your thoughts about it. I was listening to the Arsenal Vision podcast about this, and you end up having to consider this from so many angles, and it's so hard to get back to that place where you just loved watching him as a footballer. And I was lucky enough to start covering Arsenal the season that they nearly, the Leicester season. He was the best player in the league, and if they'd had 11 of them, they'd have romped 11 Ozils. They might have let in a few goals, but they'd have romped to the title. It's a real shame. I just think it's a real shame that that's how it's ended, with everyone just going, "Oh, thank God it's over." That's the one thing I would never have thought. I've never thought we'd just be. We'd have got tired of Ozil.
All right, I've got the final question. It's a professional one for you. As we said at the beginning of the broadcast or the podcast. I'm leading to the broadcast. We're CBS now. CBS is getting their feet wet covering soccer, as we call it here in the U.S. This is new for them. Actually, I teach television. I'm going to throw way back. They actually did cover the very first professional league here, but that was back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Long, long, long gone. But, they were the Tiffany Network, as they were known. And I grew up with them, and they were the polished, and they covered the NFL. I'm very happy to see them make a bid for this and step in with this, because I think, being an American, the last two networks, and I'll leave them unnamed, but people can look them up. One was a major, one was a minor, but I think they both went cheap with the Champions League.
Yes.
One just didn't invest. They didn't put their best broadcasters. They didn't care very much about putting the best program forward. The last ones were just too small, unbecoming of Champions League. So here's a big network with a big opportunity. You're moving into that. What's your experience been? And what are their plans for growing Champions League here?
I can't speak to their plans because I'm far too junior to be involved in such things. But I know, the ambition of it blew me away. I'll be honest, it's a name that kind of, even here in the UK, it's sort of synonymous with quality. I mean, the one I'd always experienced was when the Masters, when that comes around every year. So often, a lot of what you'll see on the BBC is the CBS feed, and it's all about putting out the best quality product. And when they got the Champions League right, it was we're going big. We're going to get the best people that are out there. And I know that means Kate Abdo, a remarkable host, some of the stuff she did on Champions League match day nights, but giving the full package. I guess Sam and Ryan, you probably haven't seen a lot of it. If it helps, I'm sometimes like that because I've got the BT feed as well, because sometimes it's a bit easier than dealing with VPNs and all that. But they've committed to the Golazzo show, we call it, the equivalent of the BT Sport whip around show, having talent out here in Europe, covering it, in myself, in Fabrizio, obviously from Italy, bringing the transfer angle, Jonathan. I think there's the real commitment to, if you're going to do something like this, if you're going to take on one of the biggest sporting products in the world, treating it with the respect and reverence that it's due, and incorporating it into, making sure that your coverage doesn't start and end with the Champions League. I'm not, I don't work, I haven't had time off between December and February. I'm, at the cold face of Premier League stuff. It's, I'm sure you'll know, Raphael, it feels like a quality organisation, prestige. I've never worked for the BBC, but it feels that. And I mean, the other thing is you open up your Slack or whatever, and the scale of Viacom CBS continually blows me away when I kind of go in a Slack room and there's 20,000 people asking questions and things like that. It's a huge company, and it's an amazing privilege that I never thought I'd get. And the culture shock of coming from Football.London, which was a brilliant operation, but very much a couple of guys making up and building it from scratch, and moving to CBS it has been a culture shock.
Well, as somebody who's just as a viewer, it's just I say, hats off to all of you, because as I was saying when I was pitching the question, there were times not that long ago, 4, 5, 6 years ago, where it was hard to find Premier League matches. I mean, Champions League matches, and you're thinking, this is Champions League,
Yeah.
And if you're a partisan, if you're really invested in it, and that was when Arsenal was in the competition, you're trying to find them, and you're having to run around, find one rinky-dink bar that's going to show it on the little TV in the corner. And now it's everywhere. And it really, as I said, you all seem to have given it the weight. You understand what you have. And so, I'm very up.
But I tell them the same thing about the Europa League. I think they've learned that it's the rinky-dink cousin of the Champions League, but that I love it all the more for that. It's a premium product, isn't it? I think it's that, and you want to treat it in that way.
All right. Well, all of us here at the pod love having you on. Thank you. You've been very, very generous with your time, James. Come back and see us sometime soon. Best of luck with the CBS venture. It seems it's really on its way. So I mean, I'm just happy for you, because it seems that's going to grow. That's going to grow for you too. So
I hope so.
I'll bid you the best. But again, thank you for your insight and your wisdom, and always great to talk Arsenal football with you, football in general. So
my pleasure. Hope to be back soon, but I'm going to dash.
Okay.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, mate.
Bye-bye.